The Devourer fleet reached the galaxy's edge exactly as human calculations had predicted. President Bei Su stood in the Terran High Command Center, watching as massive black shapes began consuming entire star systems on the outer rim. Behind, her representatives from the dissolved Galaxy Council waited in terrified silence for humanity's judgment. Through quantum transmission screens, she could see the approaching nightmare in perfect detail. Each Devourer ship was the size of a small moon, its surface absorbing all light and energy. They moved through space like living shadows, leaving nothing but empty void where thriving solar systems had existed moments before. For 3 years, President Bei Su said, her voice carrying to every corner of the command center, humanity thrived in isolation while your civilization tore itself apart. We formed alliances with powers you never knew existed. We achieved technological advances that make your greatest achievements look primitive. We built a society based on merit, cooperation, and mutual respect. Everything your council claimed to represent but never practiced. Admiral Nayul provided the tactical briefing that shattered any remaining illusions about the council's former power. The Devourer fleet was not just unstoppable by conventional means, it was a test. An ancient failsafe left by the galaxy's predecessors to emerge whenever civilization became too fractured and arrogant to maintain the unity necessary for continued survival. The previous galactic empire had failed this test catastrophically. Their records, now fully decoded by human archaeologists, revealed a society remarkably similar to the Council, hierarchical, dismissive of lesser species, convinced of their own superiority. When the Devourers came, that empire's internal conflicts prevented any coordinated response. They died arguing about who should lead the defense while their worlds burned around them. The Devourers feed on conflict, Dr. Yoon-jae explained to the assembled alien delegates. Every war you started after driving away human peacekeepers made them stronger. Every act of aggression between council species provided energy for their awakening. Your arrogance did not just create a military crisis, it summoned the galaxy's greatest predators. Fleet Admiral Li Wu stood before a holographic display showing the true scope of humanity's preparation for this moment. The Terran Alliance did not just include the species the Council knew about. 17 different galactic civilizations had joined humanity after witnessing their principled stand against the Council's tyranny. The Andromedans brought million-year-old technologies for manipulating dark energy. The Void Traders contributed weapons that could strike across dimensional barriers. The Star Builders offered defenses capable of protecting entire galactic clusters. The Eternal Wanderers shared knowledge of fighting Devourers across multiple universal cycles. Combined with humanity's own advances, the Alliance commanded power that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Their fleets could phase between dimensions, strike from parallel universes, and coordinate attacks across space-time itself. But the most important advantage was philosophical rather than technological. The Devourers can only be defeated through perfect unity, Commander Cho Min explained as tactical displays showed Alliance forces moving into position. Every species must work together without rivalry, jealousy, or thoughts of personal advantage. This is why your council could never have survived their arrival. Your entire civilization was built on hierarchy and dominance, rather than cooperation and respect. Captain Kim so led the first phase of the defense from her flagship, a vessel that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Around her, the combined fleets of the Terran Alliance moved with precision that seemed impossible. Millions of ships from dozens of species operated as a single organism, each crew member perfectly synchronized with commanders they had never met from worlds they had never seen. This level of coordination was beyond anything the Council had ever achieved. Even at the height of their power, alien fleets had been plagued by communication problems, cultural conflicts, and competition between different species' military doctrines. The Alliance had solved these problems through humanity's greatest strength, their ability to see past surface differences and find common ground between radically different forms of life. The first battle between Alliance forces and the Devourer vanguard took place in the Kepler sector, where Dr. Yoon-jae had once shared medical knowledge with alien colleagues who later mocked her work. The engagement lasted 17 minutes and ended with the complete destruction of 12 Devourer ships without a single Alliance casualty. But this victory, came at a terrible cost that only humans fully understood. Intelligence Director Im Jun monitored the energy patterns released by the dying devourers and confirmed humanity's worst fears. These creatures were not just predators, they were antibodies. The galaxy was infected with the disease of civilization, and the devourers existed to sterilize any region where intelligent life became too chaotic and destructive to sustain itself. Killing them was possible, but only by proving that the galaxy deserved to survive. This meant demonstrating the kind of unity and cooperation that the Council had made impossible through their arrogance and stupidity. The real test was not military, it was moral. Minister Park Bo coordinated the massive refugee effort that followed the Alliance's early victories. Entire populations from Council worlds were evacuated to safety in parallel dimensions, while their home systems were cleansed of the chaos that fed the devourers. The process required relocating trillions of beings to temporary shelters while their societies were rebuilt from the ground up. Every refugee had to abandon the hierarchical thinking that had created the crisis. They had to accept that their former leaders had been wrong about everything. They had to learn new ways of interacting with other species based on respect rather than dominance. Most difficult of all, they had to acknowledge that the humans they had dismissed as primitive were their intellectual and moral superiors in every way that mattered. The psychological transformation was devastating for many aliens. Beings who had spent their entire lives believing in their species' superiority suddenly found themselves dependent on the charity of creatures they had considered beneath notice. But those who made the transition successfully discovered something remarkable. The new society humanity was building was not just more peaceful than the Council. It was more prosperous, more innovative, and more fulfilling than anything they had ever experienced. Commander Cho Min watched as former Council worlds were transformed into paradise settlements, where different species lived and worked together without conflict. Children who had been raised to see other species as enemies now played together in integrated schools. Scientists who had hoarded knowledge within species-specific institutions now collaborated on projects that benefited everyone. The change was not just political, it was spiritual. As the final Devourer ships were destroyed in the galaxy's core sectors, President Basu addressed what remained of galactic civilization one last time. The ancient test had been passed, but only through the complete transformation of everything the galaxy had once believed about itself. Your council failed because it was built on the assumption that some species were inherently superior to others, she said to the billions of beings watching from refugee camps and temporary shelters. You dismissed humanity because we were newer and smaller, never recognizing that wisdom comes from character rather than age or size. The galaxy that emerged from the crisis bore no resemblance to the hierarchical empire that had existed before. Species boundaries became fluid as intermarriage and cultural exchange created hybrid communities. Scientific research became collaborative efforts spanning multiple worlds. Military forces were integrated at every level to prevent the kind of factional conflicts that had fed the Devourers. Most importantly, leadership was based on demonstrated competence and moral character rather than species membership or political connections. Admiral Li Wu took command of the new Galactic Defense Force, not because he was human, but because his record of service and sacrifice had earned the trust of every species in the Alliance. Dr. Yoon Jae led the Medical Research Council because her knowledge and compassion had saved billions of lives, not because of her species' origin. The transformation was complete when former Chairman Vrextal, now serving as a junior aide in the Wei Agricultural Development Program, publicly thanked the humans for having the wisdom to walk away from a system that had corrupted everyone it touched. We called you primitive, he said in a speech that was broadcast across the galaxy. But you were the only species mature enough to recognize that true strength comes from being willing to walk away from those who refuse to treat you with respect. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson in the universe, that sometimes the greatest victory comes not from conquering your enemies, but from having the courage to demand better and the wisdom to build it yourself when no one else will. Humanity had saved not just the galaxy's population, but its soul. And in doing so, they had created a civilization that would never again need to fear the test of the Devourers. The age of hierarchy was over. The age of cooperation had begun. Chairman Vrextal's tentacles shook uncontrollably as he read the latest intelligence reports. The Galaxy Council's most advanced deep space sensors had detected something that made every previous crisis seem insignificant. A massive fleet of unknown ships was approaching from the void between galaxies, moving at speeds that should have been impossible. Security Chief Corvin had never seen his leader so terrified. The insect-like chairman, who had once dismissed humanity with casual arrogance, now clicked his mandibles nervously as he studied the sensor data. The approaching fleet was enormous, thousands of ships, each larger than anything in the galaxy's combined military forces. But size was not the most frightening aspect of the unknown vessels. They seemed to absorb all electromagnetic radiation, appearing as perfect black voids against the starfield. They emitted no communication signals, responded to no attempts at contact, and left no trace of their passage except the complete disappearance of everything in their path. 3 remote monitoring stations had simply vanished when the fleet passed through their positions. Not destroyed, vanished, as if they had never existed at all. Fleet Admiral Zergex commanded what remained of the Galaxy Council's military forces. After 2 years of constant warfare between member species, less than 30% of the original fleet remained operational. The rest had been destroyed in the endless conflicts that erupted when human peacekeepers withdrew from their stabilizing roles. His tactical staff had run every possible simulation against the approaching threat. Every scenario ended in total defeat. The Council's fragmented fleets could not coordinate effectively without human strategic advisors. Their weapon systems were failing without human technical support. Their morale had collapsed as soldiers lost faith in leaders who had created this disaster through their own stupidity. War analyst Nexcal made the most chilling discovery of all. The approaching fleet followed the exact same route described in ancient warning messages left by the galaxy's previous civilization. These were the legendary Devourers, the cosmic predators that fed on conflict and chaos. For 10,000 years, the Council had maintained that the Devourers were mythology, ancient stories told by primitive species to explain natural disasters they did not understand. The idea that galaxy-consuming predators actually existed had been dismissed as superstitious nonsense. Now those mythological creatures were 3 months away from reaching the galaxy's outer rim. Emergency Coordinator Plexion led the first official Council delegation to venture into the region once known as human space. What they found beyond humanity's dimensional barriers shocked them into silence. The Soran territory that had once contained struggling human colonies now hosted a thriving interstellar civilization that spanned multiple galaxies. Earth itself had been transformed into a paradise world, surrounded by massive space stations that housed billions of beings from dozens of different species. But these were not the primitive humans the Council remembered. The beings they encountered moved with fluid grace that suggested perfect physical conditioning. Their eyes held depths of knowledge that spoke of lifespans measured in millennia. They wielded technologies that bent the laws of physics in ways that seemed impossible. Admiral Li Wu met the Council delegation at the border between human space and the chaos that had consumed the galaxy. He stood on the bridge of a ship that phased in and out of multiple dimensions simultaneously, surrounded by holographic displays that showed real-time information from across the entire universe. The human who had once served as a junior captain in Council peacekeeping forces now commanded fleets that could cross galactic distances instantly. The species the aliens had dismissed as backward had become masters of sciences the Council could not even comprehend. You created this crisis through your own arrogance, Admiral Li Wu said calmly as the alien delegates begged for humanity's help. For 3 years we offered cooperation, shared our knowledge freely, and served as mediators in your conflicts. You repaid us with insults, theft, and exile. Counselor Quindar felt her tentacles curl with shame as she remembered laughing when humans were forced from their worlds. She had joined the mockery when humanity withdrew from the Council. Now she was prostrating herself before beings she had once considered inferior, begging for salvation from a threat her people could not face alone. The Devourers are coming because galactic civilization has become too fractured to resist them, Admiral Li Wu continued. They feed on conflict and chaos. The wars you started when you drove away human peacekeepers have made them stronger than they have ever been before. Dr. Yunjie provided the technical briefing that destroyed any remaining hope the council delegates might have held. The Devourer fleet was not just militarily superior. It was sustained by the very violence that now consumed council space. Every battle between alien species fed the approaching predators. Every act of aggression made them more powerful. The ancient civilization that had preceded the council had learned this truth too late. Their records, now decoded by human archaeologists, told the story of a galactic empire that had grown arrogant and divided. When the Devourers came, that civilization's fractured fleets were consumed one by one as their internal conflicts prevented any coordinated defense. The Devourers can be stopped, Dr. Yunjae explained to the stunned alien delegates. But it requires the complete technological, military, and philosophical resources of a truly united galaxy. Not the petty hierarchy your council created, but genuine cooperation between species that respect each other as equals. Chairman Vrexatal's voice cracked with desperation as he asked the question that would determine the fate of trillions of beings. What do you need from us? What price must we pay for humanity's help? Commander Cho Min answered with the cold precision of someone who had watched good people die because of alien arrogance. Nothing. You have already proven that you are incapable of the unity required to face this threat. The Terran Alliance and our partners will handle the Devourer crisis ourselves. The alien delegates stared in shock as they realized the implications of the humans' words. Humanity was not asking them to join a desperate last stand against impossible odds. Humans were telling them that they were not needed for the galaxy's defense. You can choose to disband your failed council and petition for membership in the Terran Alliance as junior partners, Commander Cho Min continued. You can accept guidance from beings who actually understand how to maintain galactic peace. Or you can face extinction alone, while we protect the civilizations that deserve to survive. Intelligence Director Im Jun displayed holographic evidence of humanity's new capabilities. The Terran Alliance now included 17 different galactic civilizations, each more advanced than the Council had ever been. Their combined fleets numbered in the millions. Their technologies could manipulate matter at the quantum level, fold space and time, and even create pocket dimensions for refugees fleeing the approaching catastrophe. Most shocking of all, humanity had already begun evacuating the galaxy's most vulnerable populations to safety in alternate dimensions. Entire species that the Council had never even contacted were being relocated to paradise worlds in parallel universes, while the aliens who had dominated the galaxy for millennia faced abandonment and extinction. Minister Park Bo reviewed the final terms of humanity's offer with merciless clarity. Council species could surrender their sovereignty completely and submit to human leadership in all matters. They could accept reduced status as protected populations under Terran guidance. They could acknowledge that their entire civilization had been a failure and that only human wisdom could save them from the consequences of their own stupidity. Or they could maintain their pride and die as the Devourers consumed what remained of their shattered empire. President Bei Su appeared via quantum transmission to deliver humanity's final ultimatum to the emergency council session. Her words carried the authority of someone who commanded technologies and alliances that dwarfed anything the aliens had ever imagined. The choice is yours, she said simply. Humble yourselves and accept that you were wrong about everything, or face the consequences of your arrogance alone. But understand this, humanity will not sacrifice our people to save beings who have learned nothing from their mistakes. The vote was unanimous. Every surviving council member voted to dissolve their government and petition for membership in the Terran Alliance as subordinate partners. The galaxy that had once dismissed humanity as primitive was now begging to serve under human leadership. The species that had stolen human worlds now offered their own territories as tribute to the beings they had insulted. But even total surrender might not be enough to undo the damage the Council's arrogance had caused. The Devourers were closer than ever, and the chaos feeding them showed no signs of stopping. Humanity would try to save the galaxy that had rejected them, but success would require miracles that even human advancement might not be able to provide. 2 years after humanity's withdrawal, Counselor Quindar stared at casualty reports that made her tentacles shake with horror. 6 billion beings had died in the Rim Wars. 6 billion or lives lost because the Galaxy Council no longer had human peacekeepers to stop conflicts. before they exploded into genocide. The hegemony wars had consumed 17 star systems. The Syndicate rebellions had destroyed entire civilizations. The Great Schism had split the galaxy's core worlds into warring factions that showed no sign of stopping their violence. Every attempt to negotiate peace had failed. The alien species had grown so dependent on human mediation that they had forgotten how to talk to each other without human translators to bridge the gaps between their different ways of thinking. Trade. Minister Vexlon discovered something even more disturbing in his economic reports. Human space had not just survived isolation from galactic commerce, it had become the most prosperous region in the known universe. Intercepted communications spoke of technological marvels, expanded colonies, and wealth that made the Council's greatest trading centers look poor by comparison. The humans were not suffering from their withdrawal. They were thriving. Dr. Hanbi worked in her new laboratory on the planet New Sol, developing technologies that would have been impossible under Council restrictions. Free from alien regulations that limited dangerous research, human scientists had achieved breakthroughs in quantum manipulation, biological engineering, and dimensional physics that transformed their entire civilization. Humans now lived for thousands of years without aging. They could heal from any injury in minutes. They traveled between stars instantly using dimensional gates that folded space itself. Their ships moved through dimensions that alien science could not even detect, let alone access. The Council had called human technology primitive. Now humans possessed abilities that seemed like magic to the aliens who had dismissed them. Captain Li Wu, now Fleet Admiral of all Terran forces, reviewed reports from human scouts exploring regions beyond the galaxy. What they found should have terrified every intelligent being in the universe. But the Council was too busy fighting each other to listen to warnings from the species they had insulted. Ancient ruins dotted the space between galaxies. Massive structures that could only have been built by a civilization far more advanced than anything currently existing. Most disturbing were the derelict ships, vessels the size of planets clearly built for war against some unimaginable enemy. The previous galactic civilization had not died from natural causes. They had been destroyed by something so terrible that even their advanced technology could not save them. Intelligence Director Im Jun brought Admiral Li Wu the most frightening discovery yet. Deep space sensors had detected movement in the void between galaxies. Something vast was stirring in the darkness, responding to the chaos and violence that now consumed the galaxy. The ancient enemy was awakening. Human archaeologists, led by Dr. Yoon Jae, had decoded warning messages left by the previous civilization. The records spoke of creatures called the Devourers, beings that fed on conflict and grew stronger from the death and suffering of intelligent species. They emerged whenever galactic civilization became too fractured and violent to maintain the unity needed to resist them. The last galactic civilization had ignored the warnings until it was too late. Their empire had burned, leaving only ruins and desperate messages for whoever came after them. Now history was repeating itself. The Galaxy Council's arrogance had fractured interstellar civilization just as the ancient enemy began to stir, but the Council remained oblivious to the approaching disaster. They were too busy dealing with the immediate consequences of losing humanity's stabilizing influence. Chairman Vrexitel's compound eyes had lost their gleam as he reviewed the latest reports of system-wide failures. The Galactic Defense Network had completely collapsed without human maintenance. 17 worlds had been evacuated after cosmic disasters destroyed their protective shields. 3 entire species faced extinction from threats they could no longer defend against. The galaxy's communication systems were failing as well. Without human engineers to maintain the quantum relay stations, messages between distant worlds took months instead of minutes to arrive. This communication breakdown made coordinating any response to the growing crises impossible. Security Chief Corvin reported that 43 member worlds had formally petitioned to leave the Galaxy Council. They wanted to seek independent agreements with what alien intelligence services now called the Terran Sphere, the mysterious region of space where humans had vanished. These defecting worlds spoke of intercepted transmissions from human space, describing wonders beyond imagination, cities that floated in the clouds of gas giants, worlds transformed into garden paradises in mere months, space stations the size of moons that housed billions of beings in perfect comfort. The humans were not just surviving their exile, they were building a civilization that made the Council look backward. And primitive Commander Cho Min stood on the bridge of the TFS Harmony, the flagship of humanity's new interstellar alliance. Through the viewports, he could see ships from the Andromedan Collective, the Void Traders, and the Star Builders, allies who treated humans as equals rather than inferior children. These new allies had technologies that made Council science look like ancient history. They had weapons that could destroy stars, shields that could protect entire solar systems, and knowledge accumulated over millions of years of peaceful cooperation. Most importantly, they had experience fighting the Devourers. The Andromedans had survived 3 previous Devourer awakenings. The Void Traders had fought them across multiple dimensions. The Star Builders had developed weapons specifically designed to destroy creatures that fed on conflict and death, but they had never encountered Devourers that had grown as strong as the ones now stirring in the darkness beyond the galaxy. The current level of galactic violence and chaos had fed these ancient enemies until they were more powerful than ever before. Minister Park Bo received daily intelligence reports about the deteriorating situation in Council space. The alien governments were collapsing as their populations lost faith in leaders who had driven away the galaxy's most stabilizing force. Revolution was spreading from world to world as beings demanded to know why their leaders had been so stupid as to insult and exile humanity. Some alien populations were trying to contact human colonies directly, begging for help and offering to abandon the Council entirely. But humanity's borders remained sealed. No alien ship could penetrate the dimensional barriers that protected human space. No alien message could reach human worlds. The species that had laughed at humanity's withdrawal now found themselves completely cut off from the civilization they had dismissed as unimportant. President Bay Sue met with her advisors in the Terran High Command chambers deep beneath the surface of Earth. The room's walls displayed holographic maps showing the spreading chaos in Council space contrasted with the growing prosperity of the Terran sphere. The choice before humanity was clear. They could continue to ignore the galaxy that had rejected them and focus on their own advancement. Or they could try to save the civilizations that had treated them with such contempt. But saving the galaxy would require more than just human intervention. The approaching Devourer threat was too powerful for any single species to handle. Even one as advanced as humanity had become, it would require the complete unification of every intelligent species in the galaxy under leadership that actually understood how to maintain peace and cooperation. Unfortunately, the only beings capable of providing that leadership were the same ones. The Galaxy Council had driven away through their stupidity and arrogance that the galaxy's last hope lay with the species they had dismissed as primitive and worthless, and time was running out fast. 6 months had passed since humanity walked out of the Galaxy Council chambers. Minister Park Bo stood in her office on Earth, looking at reports that would have made the alien delegates panic if they could see them. Every human colony, research station, military base, and diplomatic post had gone completely silent to alien communication. It had not been easy. Cutting all ties with galactic civilization meant abandoning trade routes that had brought wealth to human worlds for decades. It meant saying goodbye to alien friends and colleagues who had treated humans with respect. It meant starting over completely. But humanity had done it. Every single human in the galaxy had agreed to the withdrawal. Not one person had chosen to stay with the aliens who had insulted and dismissed them. On the planet Kepler, Dr. Yoon Jae watched as her former research partner, a Zephyrian scientist named Keltar, tried desperately to contact her laboratory. The alien sent message after message, begging for help with a medical crisis that was spreading through his homeworld. For 3 years, human doctors had shared their knowledge freely, teaching aliens how to fight diseases that would have killed millions. Now the humans were gone, and the Zephyrians were dying from a plague they did not know how to cure. Dr. Yoon Jae felt terrible watching her former friend suffer. But she remembered how Keltar had laughed when the Council voted to steal human worlds. She remembered him joking about human primitive medicine just hours before begging for human help. The message went unanswered. Captain Li Wu, now promoted to admiral, received similar desperate calls from his former alien military contacts. The Velkarian Defense Force was falling apart without human tactical support. Their officers had relied on human strategy guides for so long that they had forgotten how to plan their own operations. 3 separate conflicts had already broken out in the Outer Rim sectors. Without human peacekeepers to mediate disputes, old enemies had immediately returned to war. The hegemony attacked the Syndicate. The Syndicate retaliated against the Federation. The Federation struck back at the hegemony. Within weeks, the death toll reached millions. The Galaxy Council sent increasingly frantic messages to Earth. Chairman Vrextal himself recorded personal appeals, begging humanity to reconsider their withdrawal. He offered trade concessions, territorial agreements, even a permanent seat on the Council's ruling committee. Every message went unanswered. As far as the galaxy was concerned, humanity had simply vanished. Engineer Kim so watched from her new position as head of Terran infrastructure as the Galactic Defense Network slowly collapsed. For years, she had maintained the complex systems that protected hundreds of worlds from asteroid impacts, solar flares, and space anomalies. The aliens had taken her work for granted, never bothering to learn how the systems actually functioned. Now, without regular human maintenance, the network was failing. Worlds that had been safe for centuries suddenly found themselves vulnerable to cosmic disasters. 3 planets had already been evacuated when their protective shields malfunctioned. The aliens finally began to understand what they had lost. Commander Cho Min supervised the final withdrawal of human peacekeeping forces from the galaxy's most dangerous regions. His troops had served as neutral mediators in conflicts that had raged for centuries. Human negotiators had prevented wars, stopped genocides, and maintained peace in regions where no other species could operate. With the humans gone, chaos erupted across the galaxy. The Outer Rim Wars began within a month. Species that had coexisted peacefully under human protection immediately turned on each other. Ancient grudges that had been held in check by human diplomats exploded into violence. But while the galaxy burned, something remarkable was happening in human space. Admiral Nayul reviewed reports from across the Terran Federation and smiled. Free from alien interference and restrictions, human scientists and engineers were making breakthrough discoveries at an incredible rate. Without the Council's regulations limiting dangerous research, human innovation had exploded. Dr. Han B led teams that developed faster-than-light communication systems that made alien technology look primitive. Her researchers created medical treatments that could heal injuries instantly and extend human lifespans by centuries. Her engineers built ships that could travel between galaxies in days instead of years. The Council had called human technology basic and primitive. Now, humans were developing advances that made alien science look like Stone Age tools. Minister Park Bo established new trade relationships with species the Council had never even contacted. 3 previously unknown galactic powers had approached humanity after hearing about their principled stand against the Council's arrogance. These new allies were far more advanced than Council species and much more interested in genuine cooperation. The Andromedan Collective offered humanity advanced manufacturing techniques in exchange for human philosophical and artistic works. The Void Traders shared dimensional technology for human agricultural methods. The Star Builders proposed a mutual defense pact after observing human military efficiency. Within 6 months, humanity had gone from galactic outcasts to the center of a new interstellar alliance that dwarfed the Council in both territory and technological advancement. Intelligence Director Im Jun monitored alien communications and reported the growing panic among Council species. The Valkyrians were begging other members to mediate their expanding war with the hegemony. The Zephyrians had requested emergency aid to fight their medical crisis. The Trade Consortium was facing economic collapse, as their most profitable routes ran through human space. Every request for help was being ignored by species too busy dealing with their own crises to assist others. President Bei Su read the daily reports with grim satisfaction. The galaxy that had dismissed humanity as irrelevant was learning exactly how relevant humans actually were. Every system that had relied on human expertise was failing. Every region that had depended on human peacekeeping was at war. Every species that had taken human assistance for granted was now facing disasters they could not handle alone. But the most shocking discovery came from deep space monitoring stations. Commander Kim So received the first reports from human scouts who had ventured beyond the galaxy's edge. They had found something that made the Council's arrogance seem not just wrong, but catastrophically dangerous. Ancient warning beacons. Derelict ships from a civilization that had ruled the galaxy millions of years ago, and most disturbing of all, signs that something vast and hostile was stirring in the dark space between galaxies. The Council had spent centuries dismissing human concerns about deep space threats as paranoid nonsense. Now humanity's scouts were finding evidence that those threats were very real and very close to awakening. The galaxy had made the worst mistake in its history by driving away the one species capable of uniting it against the coming darkness. Soon they would learn just how terrible that mistake truly was. Kang Hyo walked into the Galaxy Council chambers for what he knew would be the last time. The massive dome stretched high above him, filled with floating seats that held representatives from 200 different alien species. The air buzzed with translation devices working overtime to convert thousands of different languages into something everyone could understand. As Earth's ambassador, Kang Hyo had spent 3 long years in this place. 3 years of watching aliens treat humans like children who had wandered into an adults-only meeting. 3 years of having every proposal dismissed with condescending smiles and patronizing comments about how humans would understand better when they grew up. Dr. Yoon Jae sat in the human section of the gallery, her hands clenched tight on her datapad. She had brought evidence of humanity's latest technological breakthroughs, medical advances that could save billions of lives, energy systems that could power entire star systems without pollution, and defensive technologies that could protect worlds from natural disasters. But she knew it would not matter. The Council had already decided that humans had nothing valuable to offer. The Valkyrian Prime Minister rose from his floating crystal throne. His purple skin gleamed under the chamber lights as he spoke in his booming voice. "The primitive humans think their basic technology deserves recognition," he said, causing laughter to ripple through the chamber. "Perhaps in a few thousand years they will develop something worth our attention." Captain Li Wu watched from the military observer section, his jaw tight with controlled anger. He had fought alongside these same aliens in the Rim Wars just 2 years ago. Human soldiers had died protecting Valkyrian colonies. Human ships had held the line when alien fleets retreated. But now those same allies acted like humanity had contributed nothing to the victory. The worst insult came when Council Chairman Vrextal called for the vote on Resolution 2847. The massive insect-like alien clicked his mandibles together as he announced the proposal. To make room for more advanced civilizations, we vote to reduce human territory by 40%. All human colonies in the disputed sectors will be relocated. Kang Hyo felt something cold settle in his chest. 40% of human space meant billions of people forced from their homes. Entire worlds that humans had terraformed and built from nothing would be handed over to species who saw humans as barely worthy of recognition. The vote was not even close. 167 votes in favor, only 12 against, 21 abstentions. The aliens had decided that human lives and human worlds meant nothing. Minister Park Bo leaned forward in her seat, her face pale with shock. She had spent months negotiating trade agreements that would have benefited everyone. Now she watched as those same trading partners voted to steal human worlds without a second thought. The chamber erupted in celebration. Alien delegates congratulated each other on solving the human problem so efficiently. Some even joked about how surprised the humans looked, as if they had actually expected fair treatment. Kang Hyo stood slowly and walked to the central speaking platform. The chamber gradually quieted as curious aliens wondered what the human ambassador would say. Many expected him to beg or plead for reconsideration. Others thought he might offer bribes or concessions to change the vote. Instead, Kang Hyo spoke in a calm, clear voice that carried to every corner of the massive chamber. The Terran Federation formally withdraws from all Galaxy Council proceedings, effective immediately. We revoke all technological sharing agreements, military cooperation pacts, and trade partnerships. Earth and all human colonies will cease all diplomatic relations with the Galaxy Council. For a moment, the chamber was completely silent. Then the laughter began. It started as quiet chuckles but quickly grew into roaring amusement that shook the dome itself. Chairman Vrextal's compound eyes gleamed with mirth. "The humans think they matter," he buzzed to his advisors. "How amusing. They act as if the galaxy needs them for something. The Zephyrian trade minister wiped tears from her 6 eyes. What will we do without human basic technology? She mocked. How will we survive without their primitive ships? Engineer Kim so stood up in the gallery, her face burning with shame and anger. She had spent years teaching aliens how to maintain their defense networks. She had shown them how human engineering could improve their systems by 15%. Now they laughed at her like she was a joke. Commander Cho-min gathered his files and prepared to leave. As head of human peacekeeping forces, he knew exactly what his withdrawal would mean. The Outer Rim sectors were only stable because human troops kept the warring species from each other's throats. Without human mediators, those regions would explode into violence within months, but the aliens did not care about consequences. They were too busy congratulating themselves on getting rid of the troublesome humans. Dr. Hanbi packed her research notes with shaking hands. For years, she had shared human medical advances freely, saving millions of alien lives. She had taught alien scientists techniques they never could have developed on their own. Now those same scientists joined the laughter, dismissing her work as worthless. Admiral Nayul activated his secure communicator and sent a coded message to every human military commander in the galaxy. The message was simple. Protocol 7, execute immediately. Within hours, every human ship, base, and installation would begin the largest withdrawal in galactic history. Kang Hyo walked toward the exit, followed by the entire human delegation. Behind him, the laughter continued. Aliens made jokes about humans taking their toys and going home. They predicted that within a year, humanity would come crawling back, begging to be readmitted to the council. As the humans reached the chamber doors, Intelligence Director Im Jun whispered to Kang Hyo, "The monitoring stations are already powering down. Deep space communications will be severed within 12 hours. By tomorrow, they will not be able to contact us even if they want to." Kang Hyo nodded grimly. The aliens thought they had won. They believed they had successfully removed a minor annoyance from their perfect civilization. They had no idea what they had actually done. The massive chamber doors closed behind the human delegation with a sound like thunder. Inside, the celebration continued. Outside, humanity prepared to show the galaxy exactly how much they had underestimated Earth and her children. The greatest mistake in galactic history had just been made, and the beings responsible were too arrogant to realize it.